we call this information disconnect. Everybody's got to know what's going on, you know. You ever been in a situation where you didn't have good communication with somebody and you basically had the idea you weren't getting through to them, or they weren't getting through to you, or they weren't telling you everything you needed to know and all that? This is kind of what this is about. You know, whenever we don't express ourselves well, sometimes you'll tell people something, like I'll tell some of you guys something, and you'll go do something totally different from what I told you to do because you didn't understand, or maybe I didn't explain it good enough. Everybody always has a problem there. But leaving out pertinent facts is an error that a lot of people make. I mean, there's a ton of people make. So whenever somebody, you assume the person knows everything you do about a given situation, and then you go over there and tell them, why are you doing this way? Because it's blowing up in your face. Well, occasionally we'll have customers that will leave something out on purpose. And here's an example of that. You see the valve deposits there? Now, this is a problem that GDI vehicles are having now. But even back in the olden days, when fuel injectors sprayed on these valves, we would still have issues. Fuel injection became the order of things, and the formulation of gasoline tended to clog injectors and cause carbon deposits and all that. And they were putting olefins in there to try to clean. I'm not going to go into all that, but the simple fact was, if you drove one a certain way, the wrong way, you had a tendency to pile up a lot more carbon on there. That stuff you see right there, if the injector is spraying on that back of that intake valve, which is what it typically does, you wind up with a lot of the octane that's being soaked up by this stuff never makes it into the cylinder. And it makes them stumble on acceleration, you know, because of the octane being absorbed by these deposits and all that. Now typically whenever the vehicle was cool, it was worse. It would pop and snort and cut up and fall on its face and stumble. The 4-cylinder Ford Rangers and 4-liter Jeep Cherokees were the worst ones that I saw, but I used to, you know, you could see it on any of them. But today's GDI engines are subject to the same deposits due to oil steam from the PCV system, and there's not any fuel injector spray to keep the valves clean. And so they have problems even right now on the newest GDI vehicles like this, and they're, you know, a lot of them you have to pull those things off and clean them whenever they're not doing it right, because it doesn't breathe good when it's got all that stuff in there either, right? Well, we struggle with these 4-cylinder Rangers and Jeep Cherokees that would stumble on cold startup. They'd fall on their face when you start them up and go boop, boop, you know. And at the time we didn't have any idea what the problem was. Later, Jeep started having us replace the PCMs. I guess it would just put an extra shot of fuel to saturate those deposits or something. I don't know what that PCM was doing different. But Jeep had us replace a bunch of those things. And Ford had us clean the valves with a walnut hole blaster. What we would do there is we would, to see if that's what the problem was, we'd pull the injectors out. We'd look in there with a borescope, we'd look at the valve through the injector hole, because it was looking right at the valve. If looking through the injector holes, we saw this carbon like this, we had a walnut hole blasting machine that basically you put dried walnut holes in it, and you had a hose hooked up to it that you'd operate with a pedal, and you put a vacuum attachment on the intake, so that the walnut holes, while they were going in, you were vacuuming them right back out. And you could just go around that valve and you would clean that valve up with them walnut holes hitting it kind of like sandblasting. And any walnut holes that managed to stay in there and get pulled into the engine would get burned up and run out the pipe. It smelled like you was burning wood when you were done. But boy, could you ever polish those valves. You could clean them things up like you won't believe it in walnut holes. Anyway, some of them had the problem a lot worse than others because of the way the vehicles were driven. And some people, after they went out of warranty, they didn't want the walnut hole thing done because they didn't want to pay that much, and they could just live with the problem. But after the out of warranty, that's usually what happened. Well, one of these Rangers seemed to be a bad penny, and it was driven by a guy that was a security guard. He'd start the truck, he'd drive it a few hundred yards, he'd switch it off, he'd sit there for an hour. He'd start the truck up, drive it another 100 yards, he'd switch it off and sit there. That is the worst thing you can do for a vehicle. To start it up, drive it 100 yards and shut it off. I mean, on every level. I mean, down in the crankcase and everywhere else, but he was piling up carbon on those valves like you wouldn't believe. Then he was grousing because it was running bad cold, and he was blaming it on the truck and all this. But most of the vehicles with this concern had been straightened out, and we kind of forgot about them, you know, because the gas formulation changed and it wasn't as bad to happen, all that kind of thing. Well, this one right here, it never really was fixed because he never would really let us fix it. And so it left, and I didn't think about it for a couple of years. All right? Well, one of the things I did when I was trying to tweak it before we had the walnut hole thing was I took a vacuum delay valve. It wasn't a check valve, it was a vacuum delay valve. And I put it in the vacuum line going to the fuel pressure regulator because when you start it up, it would keep the fuel pressure up a little higher for a little bit before it would ease down. There was another one I had on an Aerostar that had a different problem, and I actually put one of those time delay power relays on it, what came off of the tempos and all. So when you switched it off, they'd stay powered up for 10 seconds so it could run the idle speed control out. Well, you had to swap the polarity in the coil part of the plug, and I put it on there, and whenever I would switch the engine off on those Aerostars, the power relay would stay powered up for 10 seconds because I doctored it and put a different relay on it, and the fuel pressure would jump up to 40 psi, and so it would give it a little extra, fuel pressure to combat other problems. But that's a long story. Anyway, we wanted to have the fuel pressure a little higher on startup, and it only helped a little bit. The short drive cycles carboned his engine up something awful. The truck just like this one out here. Well, a couple of years went by, and I didn't recognize the same truck when it came in there again. I just work on 1,000 cars a year, 2,000 or whatever. You don't think about this being the same truck. Sometimes you remember it, sometimes you don't. This guy was a guy that I happen to know because he worked with my brother. He comes in there, and he said he wanted a tune-up. Well, what the heck is a tune-up anyway?
Plugs, wires.
You gonna throw plugs and wires at it every time you
No, but that's like a generic term. Air filter.
Well, you want to check the filters and fluids and try to put it back like it was supposed to be. You're also, nowadays you're going to put plugs in it, you're going to clean the throttle body, you're going to look for anything that you might see that if the PCV system's working right and all this kind of stuff, filters and everything like that. Maybe plug your scan tool in, see what your fuel trims are looking like, see if there's any other repairs that need to be done. But nowadays, when we were doing with a tune-up, we went ahead and I did all the stuff you'd ordinarily do for a tune-up. This was before the days of OBD2, by the way. I did the tune-up, finished it while the engine was still warm. He brought it, waited on it, I did the tune-up, drove the truck, seemed like it ran okay. See, I never had the truck cold. All right, the next morning he came back complaining the tune-up had messed up his truck and now it didn't run right cold, and he wanted us to fix it because he thought it was on us, right? He was leaving something out. Standing there while I checked it, and I didn't find anything visibly wrong with what I'd done. Then I noticed this vacuum check valve in the fuel pressure regulator vacuum line. Thinking, wait a minute, I know this truck. This truck had this problem when the guy bought it. The cold running problem. Rather than bring it to us and telling us, this truck runs like crap when it's cold, I want something done about that, he said tune it up, and he figured once he had his foot in the door on a tune-up, he could come back and throw everything else on us that he could find wrong, you know what I mean? And so, how did I deal with that? I said, I know this truck. I recognize this truck. I said, it belonged to this other guy, and I knew the guy's name that owned it before. And when I gave him the previous owner's name, he started to turn kind of red in the face. I said, we worked on this truck for this same problem you're talking about before. And he sold it to you with this problem. And before it tuned up, that you left that out and tried to burn us by paying for a tune-up and claiming we messed it up. Didn't you do that? Is that what you just did? And everything I said, he got a little bit redder, and he wasn't red because he was mad, he was red because he was embarrassed. And he got in the truck and drove it away, and I never saw him again. Well, the thing about it is that sometimes people will do that, I've had people here. We put brakes on a Ford Ranger one time. Basically, we just machined the the rotors and put pads on it. And the guy came back and says, y'all messed up one of my wheel bearings. It's a 4-wheel drive. We didn't take all that apart. You messed up one of my wheel bearings when you put the brakes on it. He's trying to tie that to us where you no, it's none of that. Anyway, I made him pay $140 for a wheel bearing. All right, service riders have got a demanding job. They got to be able to communicate really well. When a service rider talks to you, they got to get good information from you. Or if you turn out to be in a position where you're riding service for a little while, and you might someday, you need to know which questions to ask. You need to know if it does it hot, cold, when it's raining. How often does it do it? How hard is it for us to get it to act up? Of course, sometimes what you'll get from the customers, every time, they'll do it every time, they'll do it every time. Then you can get the customer to ride with you, and they'll say, well, I don't know why it's not doing it now. This kind of thing. So they got to know how to ask the right questions so as to give the mechanic information, because the mechanics, a lot of the times, is not going to help. You remember when I told you when we're working on squeaks and rattles and vibrations and stuff, you better make sure the one you're working on is the same one they're complaining about, or you'll put 2.5 hours working on something that bothers you, and he'll say, well, I wasn't talking about that, I was talking about this. And so it's a totally different deal. I do a work order on an Econoline van with a bunch of repair lines, the way those repair orders were set up, you'd have several different repair lines that were different concerns you were supposed to address. The very first repair line this guy wrote up on this vehicle was under warranty, said you had to turn on the left turn signal to start the van.
What?
That's what he said. Didn't make any sense to me either. Sure enough, I went out there, van wouldn't start, turned on the left turn signal, I fired up.
Somebody jacked
I said, I'm gonna attack this first. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Gotta turn on the left turn signal and start the van. And so I went into the wiring schematic and I dug in there and I found out somebody had altered the wiring to make it this way. And this was like a brand new van. It was a conversion van, but it was brand new. And I went out to the service writer that gave me the ticket. I says, I was looking at this thing you got on the first repair line about you have to turn on the left turn signal to start the van. And it looks to me like somebody has changed the wiring so it'll work this way. He says, oh yeah, I knew that. I just put that down there so you'd know how to start it. Why didn't you put it on a sticky note or something, man, instead of writing it on a repair? First line was the repair, was that. Next line was, you know, engine skip. Next line was oil leak, whatever, you know. But anyway, so thanks for putting it on the repair line, Dodo. Okay, when we don't get good information, accidents happen and the wrong work can be done. Sometimes mechanics will drift off course. I knew of this one guy, knew of him personally. He took a little Chevrolet that he had to a dealer around here, and he said it's overheating. Got an overheating vehicle. So he took it over there, and the mechanic that was working on it got sidetracked, and you notice the engine was skipping. And so he got to chasing that rabbit instead of worrying about the overheating problem. And by the time he went to the point of where he had replaced the injector and done all the other work to fix the engine skip, oh, the engine was running just smooth, but he had not touched the overheating problem, and the guy burned it up on the way home because he thought it was fixed. Now see, that was the mechanic's fault. The service writer wrote that it was overheating. All he heard the mechanic saying was, you know, it needs this, it needs that, it needs the other coil pack injector, whatever the guy did to it. And that was a total disaster. And the car was fried because the guy didn't fix the overheating problem. He assumed it was fixed when he picked it up and paid a $500 bill. You see what I'm saying? And so he heads home on it and burns up on the way home. Epic communication failure, all right? What about when the customer sees something else going on they don't consider significant enough to mention? In other words, they're seeing, a lot of times people don't even, when they're looking at the gauges and all, they're not sure. There was one guy out here that was telling me a while ago that he had check engine light on after he changed his oil. Hello! Woo! I don't know what the world he's doing out there anyway. Okay, so this 98 Dodge Caravan, 179,000 miles, she comes and tells me that her Caravan was Jenkin. Jenkin. You never heard that? My car is Jenkin. Well, that's between jerk and yank, yeah. That's what I'm saying here. Okay, I sent one of my more seasoned guys with her on a test drive. She came back and described a surge, but it only did it a couple of times just briefly. Okay, so the code we told him was for an inactive or slow oxygen sensor, and on a Chrysler that can happen anywhere within the O2 sensor's range, and too often it happens just above a half a volt. I've seen that on Dodges and Chryslers before, a lot of times where it'll hang up just above a half a volt. What does the fuel trim do if it's above a half a volt on those kind? It starts trying to correct it with fuel trim. And it'll drop in and out of open. It's really weird how it does it. It'll go in and out of closed loop. And if you look at the fuel, if you look at these, the fuel trim will look something like that. It'll be almost a perfect sawtooth. And your oxygen sensor will be floating along here just above a half a volt. All right, so when that thing's active and it's trying to correct a condition that it can't correct, what you're going to feel is what might be described as Jenkin. You know what I mean? So we drove it and had some length with the scan tool on it, saw it do this. Oxygen sensor hung around just above a half a volt. Felt it Jenkins, saw the fuel trim doing this. I've actually seen Dodge pickup trucks, like early 90s Dodge pickups, quit going down the road because of that hot line. I mean, just quit, where you had to switch them off and restart them. And then when they tried to go back into closed loop, they go to doing it again. I had one time that belonged to one of the presidents of college, a different guy than the guy we got now. And he wanted me to drive his home, so I drove it. And when I felt it doing that, I said, I know what's wrong with this. So I took the oxygen sensor wire and I cut it and I grounded the one that gives it the signal. So when I did that, if you ground it, the signal's gonna stay low. It'll never go into closed loop and you can just keep on going. Now, when we got back, we put an oxygen sensor on it and it took care of it. I mean, you know, whenever I got back, I drove it home that one day. But anyway, but it was just a horrible driving thing. That same vehicle, by the way, that guy he told me every time he made a sharp curve on it, it would stall. And we drove it, and every time we make a sharp curve, didn't matter which way we was turning, it would stall. Come on, guys, you gotta fix it. What's wrong?
Every time he made a sharp turn.
When he would make a turn, he would turn and it would try to quit, and then it would finally catch and go. If he turned right or if he turned left, it would do it the same way.
The gas is sloshing around.
It is, but what else is in there with the gas? Water. He had water that was going like a wave and it would get picked up. And so basically on that one, just for the a quickie, I poured some stuff in there to bust up the water and let it go through. You know, it works okay. But if it's got very much water in it, you can't do that. All right. So that's the one I was talking about that I didn't go to that slide on. Well, we had verified this woman's concern. We isolated a problem that fit her description of the concern. It's Jenkins, as close as we can get, you know what I'm saying? Had a probable cause, not only based on what our scan tool was showing us in the PID window, but stuff I remembered on other platforms. I had felt them do this before, okay? We had a solid data, we had prior experience on our side, we gathered the data scientifically, we saw no other concerns related or otherwise. The Caravan would need an O2 sensor, right? This one only has one upstream sensor, by the way, so game, set, and match, right? We're done? Told her about it. Now that she had special circumstances here, she was going on a student services trip. They had a bus and they were going down there to the USS Alabama or somewhere. And they were gonna be back that night about 11:30 at night. And so she paid the cashier up front for what I told her the repair was gonna be. Because she said that's all I really got the money for. And so she paid them. And what she did was, went off on a trip. She was gonna come back. I was gonna leave the key in the vehicle and let her just jump in it and take off and go home with it. And here she is out of the loop going off down that way. All right, $80, give or take a few bucks. Bad idea, man. I got her pay for it. Well, right, you know, everything's right in the world. She'd be back at 11, get her keys out, and she'd drive home. You know? Well, service advisors like to be the customer's hero. The service advisor likes to come back and says, well, I told you initially it was going to be $480, but we found something that wasn't as bad and it's only going to be $220. And customers like to hear that. What the service writer doesn't like to hear you say is, you know, I did my repair, I verified the repair, I found something else that I didn't have the ability to see before I did my earlier repair. You know, like as surgically as you can, you try to find out what's wrong. But every shop manual in the world says verify the repair. What does that mean? If the repair, you may have repaired something that needed to be repaired, but if there's something else there, you're going to have issues, right?
Like guys Lincoln.
Like the guy's Lincoln, yeah. So he looking at a gas gauge problem over there. All right. Doesn't take any normal person, doesn't make any normal person happy to be the bearer of evil tidings. I don't like giving people bad news, do you? All right. So most service advisors want the technician to give them a bona fide guarantee that the part the technician plans to install and the work they're going to do will take care of all the customer's concerns. Our service writers say, okay, if we do this, can you guarantee me it's going to fix it? Well, I know it needs this, but until I verify the repair, I won't know. Because they want to put it back on you. See, you told me, you know, I'm not going to promise them anything. I know that it needs this, but I don't know if this is all it's going to need. Right, we can't give them that guarantee. Verify the repair, right? On the Caravan, what we thought would be the final test drive, the battery light started blinking and the van started surging really bad. I mean, the battery light's winking off and on, right? The guys that were doing the work coasted back into the service lot with a totally dead battery, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she was expecting to pick the car up that night. Not good, right? Okay, so what do we do about that? And a flashing light. I scrambled to find the cell phone number of the college bus driver, the guy that was driving our college bus, got her on the phone, and I told her what the circumstances is. She didn't expect to, I didn't want her expecting to hop off the bus nearly midnight and find her van ready to drive home. Because it wasn't going to be ready. You imagine what that'd be like. She's dumped off right here in the parking lot, and the bus drives away, and her van's not ready, and she's got no ride. You know, she's got to wait for an hour. So she's a little disappointed, but she was really nice about it. So we're going to find out what's going on. Well, this is what we found. The brushes in the alternator was shot. All right, so we did a tear down. Called her, she said she didn't have the money for an alternator. I deal with a lot of people that don't have money around here, so I wasn't surprised. So what do you do now?
Take the alternator and have the brushes replaced.
Yep, well,
Cheaper. Sing it.
very large boys fix the alternator themselves. They don't take it and have it replaced. You're still thinking like a customer, okay? What we did, we took some slightly better brushes out of another old Nipodenso generator we had, because she didn't have no more money. You know, the patch brought her generator back to life. But look how bad those slip rings look. That was on this vehicle, right here. The rotor slip rings look horrible. Now, I will tell you that when Visteon rebuilds an alternator, they actually measure the diameter of those slip rings, and they do what they have to bring them back to factory specs. A lot of your alternator ring manufacturers won't do that. They just slam brushes in there. All right. So I like to rewind and ask a few questions in an attempt to determine what we could have done to avoid this landmine. Question number one. Why didn't she mention the battery light or dead battery problems if this concern was the same problem? What the problem there was, we had two things that were wrong that were causing the same problem, or were capable of causing the same problem. Now, I remember when I was working at Ford Place over there, this family that were pretty good customers brought this Thunderbird in there that had like 140,000 miles on it, never had the hood open on it. And in those days, the EVP sensor that sitting on top of the EGR valve could cause the engine to stall, and the idle air control, and there were several things that needed, you know, to keep it from stalling. They wrote it up for sometimes it would stall at a red light. If you just fix one of those things, and one of the other ones that I had also found issues with those, because the car hadn't had the hood open on it for any kind of repair except an oil change and 140,000 miles, so it was time, you know. And so I said it's going to need $450 worth of parts and labor to make sure it's not going to stall when you're stopping again. Because if you just fix part of it, they're going to come back if it stalls again and says, you sold me stuff I didn't need. I want my car fixed for free. You know what I mean? So anyway, I went ahead and made, you know, I wasn't throwing stuff at it it didn't need. It needed everything I said. And so one of the salesmen, he was a big old blonde hair guy, looked like a wrestler. He came back there and he goes, this car, you've got to have just one part you can change to fix this. We shall not put 3 or 4 parts on this car. I've sold them 5 cars, and they're going to be upset if they see that this is going to be $450. I says, well, since you sold them so many cars, maybe you could help them with their bill.
Yeah.
And he went, this ain't funny. Well, what I did was we made them an estimate. They said, go ahead and do it. We put the stuff on, and they was happy as a lark. They drove off with a good running car. Well, see, a lot of people that don't pull wrenches don't understand the fact that you can have several things that can cause the same problem. And if you know that vehicle good enough to know what you need to do, you know what I'm saying? It was like his vehicle the other day. We cleaned the throttle body on his truck and fixed the problem that he says that people on the internet are reflashing PCMs, all kind of stuff for, and all we did was clean his throttle body, right? Okay, here's another question. Is it possible that maybe she hadn't noticed the battery light? Maybe it was a coincidental failure. Maybe it was something that failed at the same time. Because my conscience was clear. I knew that oxygen sensor was an issue. If we had just fixed the alternator, and then she wound up needing an oxygen sensor, it would have been the same deal, see? Was this an information disconnect or a circumstantial landmine? Right? Okay, and what do you do when you spent most of what somebody had in their checking account on a repair you were sure was totally legit, and that one was, only to find the customer has another more expensive problem that rears its head before the car leaves the shop? Everybody, you know, people got money problems. It's nice to have a customer that doesn't have this. This guy came one time up there to the Ford place, and he handed a blank check with his signature on it to the cashier and said, my truck's fixed, skipping, and I want it fixed. I put 1 spark plug wire on it, and his bill was not very big at all. Well, the simple fact is, if you got a customer that trusts you that much, you better, you know, handle that trust right. You figure out what your check engine light was?
It scanned it, finally scanned it, and it, come on there, and I clicked on it, and then it just went to erase code, and then I clicked yes, and then it's like still on there.
Yeah, so your check engine light's still on? Yeah, so it had nothing to do with your oil. Right. All right, so what you gotta do is you gotta find out what that code is. Now, one of the things you don't wanna do, in that kind of situation you're in, is to do an auto scan, because it's gonna take forever to scan all those modules. All you're interested in is the PCM.
I did an auto scan, it took like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying, it'll really get you all caught up in there. In the grand scheme of things, she was a lot better off with the car having quit on my two guys. I would rather it quit on Joe and Bob coming back in here than, even if we had to go pull them in, you know? Then with her on a lonely country road somewhere at midnight. Nobody that genuinely gives a rip about their customer wants anything to happen like that. Like, you know, she gets halfway back home. Imagine that, if this hadn't happened and her alternator light started blinking, she's halfway home in the middle of nowhere. That would have been nasty, wouldn't it? I mean, a lot of times we gotta think about just how important the work we do is to keeping people safe. Because somebody's safer inside their car with it running and going down the road than they are broke down beside the road with whoever may stop. You know what I mean? So, there was one more little thing I wanted to say. There was this lady up here that I know that works here at the college, and her daughter was driving down the interstate and on a car that was nearly brand new, and it quit, coasted over the side of the road. And this guy stopped supposedly to help her, and he tried to attack her. Well, another car stopped, and he jumped in his car and took off. And we looked at this car, and it was blue in the face, couldn't find nothing wrong with it. And I believe the guy used some kind of an EMP device to cause her car to shut down.
She had a 38 in her purse.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have messed with her.
Yeah, she didn't have that though, you know. But anyway, she got nearly a new car. She didn't feel like he was going to quit on her on the interstate, you know. So, anyway.
Every lady ought to be armed.